Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story, where each weekday we offer a brief lesson from a section of today's reading, and then we examine a single relevant question that passage points us to. Today I'm joined by Sheryl, Daughety, and we're looking at a passage from Numbers chapter 8. So Numbers 8 opens with a description of a daily service to be provided by Aaron, who was the priest. So the priests were to make sure that the light of the menorah didn't go out. This light was considered or meant to be this everlasting light because it was lit from the flames of the fire of God that fell on the brazen altar when the tabernacle was first erected. And the light itself was this reminder of the abiding presence of God with Israel. So to a great degree, the ministry of the priest involved the rites that in essence did not change. Their rituals followed this daily basis and could be calculated days, weeks, and months in advance, barring any tragedies. Right? They knew what they were going to have to do and what it was going to take to be able to do it. It's odd at the end of the instruction that Moses gave Aaron, we find this phrase, so Aaron did this just as the Lord commanded Moses. Why is it emphasized here that the actions of Aaron were exactly what the Lord had commanded? Maybe this statement's just another example of the detail-oriented style that you find in Numbers. I don't know. Maybe it's intended to praise Aaron for following the instructions precisely. But a Hebraic perspective suggests that the emphasis is on the fact that Aaron did not make any changes to the instruction he was given. That seems to be the essence of priestly ministry, to follow the instructions of the Lord without making any change. And so the thing we could take away maybe from this is that the eternal is reflected in a daily routine. So in one sense, we can see the ministry of a priest as inhabiting the eternal through daily rituals. Their routines didn't change or vary. And as such, these rituals reflected that they were serving a God who was eternal. So they did the same thing over and over again. The ministry of keeping the everlasting light burning at the menorah is an example of living in the eternal one day at a time. And although our lives look a lot different than that of an Israelite priest in the Old Testament, this principle applies to us. We are living and serving an eternal God, even as we perform our daily, sometimes mundane routines. So Sheryl, how might it change our perspective on our daily routine if we were to think about it as an act of service to an eternal God?
I think the thing that my mind naturally goes towards is motherhood because, just being a parent in general, there are so many things about having kids, especially really young kids, that can often feel, I think you used the word mundane, because sometimes it feels like it's the same thing over and over, and you're running on a schedule you didn't used to run on because you're thinking about nap times and getting to bed on time and making sure everybody's got dinner, all that good stuff. But I think that if we do choose to look at it from an eternal perspective like that, that we can recognize how important each of those tasks are because of who they are for and who those children are, as children of God, as people that you want to raise to follow Jesus.
Right.
But that's just a small example. I mean, I think, gosh, especially like when you're in a ministry job, there's some stuff you have to do that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this for the 500th time and I don't think anybody cares,
Yeah. Is it making a difference at all?
Right.
Is it moving the needle?
But then you just have to trust that it does and that it's going to be effective, whether it looks like it is to you or not, and keep on going.
Paul wrote, he said, do everything as unto the Lord, right? That you should think about, okay, I'm doing this for Jesus. I'm not doing this for somebody else, I'm not even really doing it for my kid, right? In the motherhood things, because, as a parent, one of the things is not only do we do the same things over and over again, we say the same things over and again.
Yeah.
Like, isn't this like the 500th time I've had to say this to you, right?
Still not sinking in.
Yeah. It doesn't make it any less important. I don't think we always apply that, right? I think it's easy when we are getting kids ready for church to say, you know what, I'm making an eternal difference, right?
Right.
But when we're changing their diaper or fixing their food or whatever, right? We don't often think of it in that context. What are some things that you maybe personally do every day that reflect this concept of obedience, just as the Lord commanded? Like you feel like I do this every day.
Well, I think one of the things is kind of related to what we just talked about, which would be just being faithful to what it is He's calling you to do that day, that very day. Whether it's something that you want to do, whether it's exciting, whether or not it's something you've done 500 times already, that you just continue down that path of being faithful, regardless of your circumstances or how you feel that day. I feel like tithing is one of those things. You have to plan for it with your finances, which does affect the daily decisions that you're making about money. And that's something that you're not, I mean, let's just be honest, you're not always joyful about being able to do that. I think my husband and I might be at the point that we are more so feel that way about it now because, to be frank with you, when we became consistent tithers a long time ago, we didn't feel like we could afford to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But we just kept making the choice that that was going to be a priority, and God called us to do that regardless of our circumstances. And then He always gave us the ability to do it, no matter what our circumstances are
Right.
or were.
That's a good example that it is a daily decision. It's not a
Mhm.
once a week or once a month decision.
No, because it's all about how you're spending your money.
Right. It is about how you order your life.
Yeah.
Everybody says this different. Communion or quiet time or prayer, Bible reading, those kind of things.
Right.
It is all about order.
Yeah.
And if I don't do that the first thing,
Oh, yeah.
and I mean, like, it's not, I don't like go sit down and immediately start reading my Bible. It takes me about usually 15 or 20 minutes to read something else. Like I'm reading something else, news or something, just to try to get my brain moving. So I'm not, reading it in a completely sleep dazed state. But that's another thing that you have to order, right? Anything that's a priority that you want to be a priority in your life. There are some things that become, right. Do I love people every day? That's always an interesting conversation to have. Well, do I think so, or do you think so? Right? Which one is it? Or do I try to do my best? And am I listening? Because there are moments. I think the key for me is, am I listening for when He prompts me that I didn't do it right? Because even in an attempt to love people to the best of my ability, I miss it. And the question is, am I listening when He nudges
Gives you another
me?
opportunity.
Right. Or when
Yeah.
He nudges me about it, to either make it right or to repent of it or to make adjustments in my life so that I can. I have to ask myself those questions every day. Am I doing these things that I need to do? And sometimes they're not. Right. So here's an easy one, right? Faithfulness in marriage. It's that's a commandment from God. Are you doing it every day? Is there anything that you do that is outside of that line? And if there is, how do you fix it? Right. And if I practiced when I was younger what I practice today,
Yeah.
my life would have been different, right? I wouldn't have found myself in now. If something happens, even it doesn't have. I can't think of anything that happened that I would go like, this is out of bounds or sin. But there have been some times where I was like, this is completely uncomfortable, and somebody needs to know about this, right? And I will tell my wife, and there's some danger in that, right? Because I don't want her to feel bad towards somebody else because the situation was awkward.
Right.
But I also know I need to put up some guardrails, right? Because faithfulness is a pleasing thing to God. It is what God called us to do, and we have to be aware. It's a daily choice, right?
It is.
Anyway, I could go a long way down that trail. But anything else that you consider to be a daily practice?
I mean, I think you mentioned a couple of them, which would be, of course, reading the Bible being a priority, prayer. I think spending time again with your family, how you're raising your kids, what kind of relationships you're putting a lot of work and time into. I mean, so this is a confession on my part. I am not a person who loves like routine or doing the same thing every day. I don't I don't really feel like I get bored easily, but I think I just like change. I like for things to change, to have new challenges, new things to figure out. But as an adult, I have had to also figure out what you're talking about, like prioritizing, making things a habit. If I want for this to be something that grows and that I'm constantly trying to make sure is headed in a good direction, then I do have to make it a priority that it's happening. Even if it's not the same time every day, it still has to happen every day. I have to make sure that I'm focusing on that stuff because I can get sidetracked quick
Well,
for something that's more enjoyable to do.
That's right.
Or
So I'm
an opportunity, or it's exciting, more exciting to tackle than this thing that you do every day.
I'm completely ADD. Like just
I'm pretty sure I'm undiagnosed something.
Well, yeah. I do like change.
Me too.
The interesting thing is that I have been able to figure out about myself is I only like change if I feel like it moves the ball forward. I don't like change just for the sake of change. I'm not made up that way. And I could give you some examples. So my wife likes change just for the sake of change.
I like both.
Right. She likes
I like
change
for
just for the
progress,
sake of
and
change.
I like change just for change.
It's not because it moves the ball forward. It's just like, I'm tired of this and I want it a different way. Right. And so, and there are things that I do routinely, right? So if I take the pillows off the bed, I put them a specific way on that chair. And I don't see any need to change it, but she just likes change,
Yeah.
But everybody's made up different, and that's something I didn't recognize when I was younger. So I like change, and in the church, one of the problems is as the leader, people think I'm just obsessed with change. I'm not obsessed with change. I want change if it makes things better, right? If I don't see how it makes things better, I don't really care about. I don't want to change just for the sake of change. But there are things that I like to be just the same every time I do it because I don't want to have to think about it. I want it to be extremely simple because it requires so much energy to change things that need to be changed. So is there something you would if you right now you would add to your day or take away from your day as we've prepared for this, or we've talked about this? Is there something that you would add to or take away from your daily routine or your life right now that you would like to, that you think would make it better?
You mean like a spiritual discipline? Or
yeah.
So when I was not working as much, I think that I had more time. Like my favorite place in our entire house and time was when I got up first thing in the morning and I sat on the swing on our porch. And I would take my Bible and my coffee out there. And I would feel like I had more of an extended period of time to really get in the scripture and really pray for a long time. And now I feel like it's a scheduled, I've got this long to do it and then I need to move on, And I will say that I do miss that, feeling like I have less of a schedule for that particular thing, to concentrate on it longer. And maybe if I didn't need sleep, I could do that. Get up earlier, get to bed earlier. I am sure that I have an ability to fix that for myself in some regard. I probably just need to give up something somewhere else and make that more.
But that's hard to do.
It is. It really is. It is. But ultimately, I am the one who can can make a decision about that.
Yeah, for me, I've talked about this a lot. This concept of rest is just something I'm trying to figure out.
Oh yeah, me too.
What works for me, what doesn't work for me, what is restorative, what is not restorative. Because I love to travel. One of the things though that I figured out about travel is that all travel isn't rest. As a matter of fact, sometimes it's just exhausting. But I have recently, even in our daily Bible reading, we would have read about the Sabbath commandment. There's around Leviticus 22 or 23 in that ballpark, somewhere in there. And it may have been 24, but he talks about the Sabbath year, not working the fields, right? Let them, whatever grows you get, whatever don't grow you don't get, but taking the year and not working. But he says this.
Well, you're making me breathing hard just talking about taking the whole year off.
But it said something that I like. I've read it 100 times, just hadn't thought about it. Right? He said you're going to be worried about what are you going to eat the 7th year and the 8th year, because you got to plant before you harvest. And he said, I will bless you so much in the 6th year that you'll have enough for the 7th year and the 8th year and into the planting of the 9th year.
Which is all about trust.
Exactly, right?
Yep.
It's all about trust. The reality is I just don't trust him enough to rest. That is the reality.
That's a hard reality.
It is. It's tough, right? Because I think God needs my help. I'm just being honest,
No,
right?
I know.
I think that's the reality of it. And we have a staff full of overachievers, people who push the limits mostly, when I read that, it's been in this week's reading as we're recording, right? So it just really sat really heavy on me. My problem is that I don't trust God to provide and take care of those situations, and I think my fingers have to be involved in, and I have to be spinning the plates, right?
Yeah.
If the plate crashes, then it must not have been important. And anyway, that's the discipline I am desperately trying to work through because it's hard, challenging. So
it is very challenging.
We're both preaching to one another, right? Well, thank you for joining us today on this edition of One Single Story. We hope you'll be back with us tomorrow as we continue our conversation around the book of Numbers.